Wow, do we have an action-packed day for you? Wells Fargo is saying goodbye to mortgages, pretty much. That's going to get pretty wild. Um, and then Florida, in an effort to save people and protect people, might actually push them out of being able to own homes. So today's going to be pretty crazy. So let's get into skills to the fail. Good morning, everybody. I am Robert Bean, your host of Scale Through the Fail. And we are going to get into something pretty crazy today. So in just a bit, we're going to be talking about how Wells Fargo made a drastic decision seriously, huge decision to essentially not do mortgage loans. Now, there's a little bit more details to that. And you might be thinking, well, that's not relevant to me. I bank at Chase, right? Or somewhere else. Or I use a local mortgage broker. Let me tell you, though, Wells Fargo is the number one when it comes to loans, believe it or not, in the banking side of things for mortgages. So their change is pretty significant. And we're going to talk about how that might affect us. We're also going to get into a recent law that was passed in Florida in efforts to hopefully curb and protect people from a major disaster that happened. But the repercussions of the law may actually price people out of their ability to afford their current home and new homes. So today's pretty crazy. But we've also got some more craziness for you. Like today is like super crazy, okay? Because we also, in what the mortgage is going on, have some insane topics to talk about. So I say that we kind of just jump right into it and talk about what the mortgage is going on. I can't wait till we have like a little intro, Larry. It's gonna be great. Like we have this little like intro. It's gonna have like like a little theme song. Like a
Like
little
the news theme song with the ding 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 like that.
yeah, or like something like goofy, like
What the mortgage is going on? What the mortgage?
well, I was thinking like a little montage footage of like a kid with a backpack walking through school, and then it's your face on the kid, and he's like looking around like, what's going on? And then there's like he drops his books, and it just shows like Mortgage 101, and like
I
but
think you
that's a lot of work, and I don't think that's in my current budget. So
well, you and I are really like, I mean, we're like brothers from the same mother because we really think the same. Because I can literally envision what you're saying, and it's almost like the idea is great, but how do we make it happen, right? That's what we're
that's
always
my
worried about.
everyday life. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is a great idea, but how do I get the money or the time or the connections or all of the above to make it happen? All right, Larry. So we're gonna jump into what the mortgage is going on. Today's pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
It says in 5 minutes or less. We might go a little bit over today. We're going to try, guys, very hard to do it in 5 minutes or less. But there were actually some pretty drastic changes that happened in the last week, and we want to make sure you actually know what's going on. Plus, I've got a really funny fact for you today, as if I don't every week. Man, all right, Larry, let's just jump into this. So I'm going to read the headline for you. Big changes to mortgage costs plus rates are slightly higher. Come on, man. Like, could you just pick something and stick with it? So, Larry, let's run through it real quick.
So last week, we literally saw the lowest interest rates in the past 4 months, which is huge news because maybe about a month before that, we saw the biggest the biggest drop in rates for 3 months. So it's like it's creeping lower and lower and lower. What we're looking for, what we've been hoping, what we're kind of expecting.
You think
right?
someone just hit the drop the rate button last week a little too hard, and they're like, "Oh crap, we hit that too hard. We got to adjust it."
No, this is lagging. They pressed it a long time ago, and it's finally starting to catch up. Their internet connection is glitching because it should be lower. uh, but yeah, so this week's rates actually went up a little higher, 6.11, so 0.04%. So nothing to write home about, but it's not what we want, right? We want the rates to keep on going down. Like we want that number to be green, not yellow. But with all things considered, these rates are like better than what we've seen pretty much the entire time we've actually talked about mortgage rates, right? Now the MBS, interestingly enough, didn't seem to change very much. However, it did go up a little bit. It was at 147. Now it's 144. Now, a reason why this is happening is not that people are not wanting to buy mortgage-backed securities. It's because the liquidity is not there, right? So there's people wanting to buy these bonds and these MBSs, but they're not able to be sold because the people who own them aren't able to liquefy them fast enough. So it's kind of making things look bad, but in reality the demand is there, right? So once it kind of catches up, then we should see an increase in the prices, which will always help interest rates. Okay.
I didn't make these bigger. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm trying my best to give you better screenshots too. But yeah, if you look at it, it's really kind of consistent. Okay, is the best way to describe it. And you'll actually see on some of these rates that they actually did
Go down.
go down. I mean,
Like
they
the
went.
arm. I see the arm over there, sitting lower, right?
Well, okay, so in comparison to last week, it's lower. Okay, but it did go up yesterday. You know what I'm saying? So it was even lower in the beginning of the week, but it went up like by 0.0, right?
I
Which
know that
again,
stuff's always funny to me.
yeah. So I mean, if we had a daily show, then you would hear a different conversation, right? But in reality, it
I'm
went
actually
up.
thinking about it, man. I'm thinking about having like a 15-minute daily show and then like an hour-long recap on Fridays because my sassy news articles and stuff that I want to start sharing with people. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
what if you could tune in today, just have this sassy live and a quick mortgage update. 1, 2, 3, and that's it. And you're like, man, I got my daily dose of real estate. And then Friday, you're like, okay, now let's have a discussion, right? I think that'd be really cool. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. Go.
No, it's okay. If you do it, I'll try to be. I'll try to be game for it. Okay. As long as my kids are not flying around, I'll try to be there. But yeah. So again, if you look at the rates, they went up, but in reality, some of them are still down. Some of them are still lower. Like look at the 15-year; it's still down by 0.1%, right? If you look at the VA loan, it's actually up a little bit. But look at the FHA loan; it's also up a little bit. So there's a little bit of ticks and a little bit ticks both directions. Okay, so yeah, it's consistent. It's for the most part.
All right. So let's get
Now,
into some of the big stuff.
so the big news, right? And this is not really mortgage rates related, but it will affect rates. Okay. And what I mean by that is because of this mechanism called loan level pricing, they add extra fees to certain parts of the risk factors, right? So if you're putting a certain amount down, or if you are borrowing a certain amount, or if your credit score is a certain number, then there's small fees that gets added. It's called loan level pricing, and it's really just a mechanism to sort of prevent risk or losses, right? It funny enough, it doesn't apply to government loans. It only applies to conventional conforming loans. Okay, but the reason why I'm
Well,
bringing
that's
this
because
up,
the government dictates the government-backed loans, right? So they
yeah,
operate under the government standards of that loan versus conventional loans. They might use their own criteria or standards, right?
yeah. I mean, there's way more to it, but in a nutshell, the government has a little bit more control over their pricing on their risk factors, right? So they might actually just change something, and it's just an adjustment, and it's maybe they're doing it constantly, right? Whereas these loan level pricings for the conventional loans, it must be kind of across the board kind of thing, right? It has to be like an agreement with Fannie and Freddie, right?
Right.
So what are risk factors? Like if you're buying a home as an investment property, that's a risk factor. So there's a small fee for that, right? If you're buying a condo with less than 25% equity, that's a risk factor, right? Multi-unit homes, cash out, right? Um, Utilizing a second mortgage, right? There's small things that, okay, well, you're doing this, okay, we're gonna have to charge you a little bit. Oh, you're doing this, I'm going to charge you a little bit, right? So there's a lot of information that we can share, and it would be here forever if we did. But the sweeping information is that it's actually improved for lower credit scores. Okay, so borrowers who have lower credit scores, they actually are paying less. I think the number was like in the neighborhood of, instead of paying 2.75% a fee, they're paying 1.5%. Right, so that's 1%. It's kind of a significant number.
Right.
However, it got worse for borrowers with higher credit scores. Okay, so it doesn't tell me how much, but in general, people who are in higher credit scores are going to see higher fees in general, whereas people with low credit scores are going to enjoy sort of a discount, right, from their
So why is it? Isn't that counterintuitive?
So the thing is, I think it's a balance, right? Because if you look at the fees are of course higher in general for the lower credit scores, right? So maybe they're being overcharged, right, for the last, I don't know, year or so, right?
So you're saying it sounds like they're trying to incentivize lower credit score people to get into the gate, but they might be charging them more on the back end. So it's almost, I don't want to say it, but I want to say it. It's almost like a bait and switch. Hey, we're here to help you. Definitely. But actually, what's really going to happen is you're going to pay more long term, and we're not really helping you.
Well, so
You think that's fair, or you think that's unfair? You can you can disagree.
I don't think that it's fair or unfair, because most people don't even pay attention to this stuff. Okay, this is something that you would only notice if you're looking at the actual APR, right?
Right.
Because APR changes with the total cost of the loan. When it comes to interest rates, this is not always a factor. Okay, so that's why it's kind of funny, because we were always looking at rates or interest rates, when in reality that's not the proper way to shop. Okay, that's not the proper way to find out if you're getting a good deal or not. Okay,
At the end of the day, it's like, how much are you paying?
yes, in
I mean,
total.
and then even then, there's a difference between what you pay monthly and what you pay over the course of the loan too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many factors. Also, you have to factor in, how long am I going to own this home?
Yep,
That's another
absolutely.
thing, right? Because
That
there's
changes
such
it. Yeah.
things, as I'm sure you know, there's such things as you can, what is it? Like paid up principal mortgage insurance, right? Where you pay a large fee, thousands of dollars to pay your mortgage insurance essentially up front, and then you don't have a monthly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
But if you're going to sell the home, I think the break even is usually like 7-8 years, and most people sell in 5 years. You'll actually lose money,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
there's like so many variables, and that's why having a great lender and a great real estate agent is so imperative, because the game is so much bigger than what's your rate, what's the interest
Absolutely.
rate. You're
It's
going to get
almost
screwed somewhere else if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. It's almost like the interest rate is like something that they threw a bone that they threw out to consumers so they can actually
Right.
try to make a
It's a
decision.
carrot. It's a carrot on the stick.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's literally a distraction. Look at the APR. That's my biggest advice to all my clients and real estate agents. Look at the APR. That's what really matters, right?
So in
So
this slide, basically, penalty for having a credit score under 680 is now smaller.
yes.
And then if they're higher, if you have a higher credit score than, what is, you said 780? Or where was it?
Seven. It just says higher credit scores in
Just a
general.
higher credit score, you basically got penalized a little bit more.
Yeah, 680 is where it kind of went up, right? And
Okay.
there's a chart that we're going to show you. I can literally kind of show you
It's
where
crazy it went up to 680 too, because it was 640 and 620, depending on the loan, of course. But I
yes.
saw 640 was one of the most common ones that I would see on the conventional side. As if you didn't have 640, they didn't want to loan you anything, really.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep moving, because we got a lot to cover. So a couple other things going on in this this area.
So we kind of cover a part of this, what's on the slide, but the interest rates being higher, again, that's something that's just a mechanism that changes constantly. So the difference between loan level pricing and interest rates is interest rates are determined by the market and it's fluctuating constantly, right? That's why people are always asking about interest rates, because it does change. Whereas loan level pricing, it's kind of a static or a set standard of costs, right? So you pretty much know what it's going to be, where you land in terms of your credit scores and your risk factors. Okay, so
Should we go to the
there's a
slide?
combination. Yeah, so if you can see
Okay.
right here where red is where it increased, right? Red is bad, right? Red is where it got more expensive, and green is where it got cheaper, right? So as you can see here, the most of the focus or concentration of the red is at the 720, 740. So those are the people that are getting hit. And it's around where they're at about 20% down, 50% down. See, up top is the loan to value, right? So right, this person has 80% loan to value. That means they have 20% equity, right? And of course, at 25% loan to value at a 720, you also saw an increase there, right? So again, it changes based on how much you have down. And funny enough, if you put less down, you actually might see an increase. I mean, a decrease in costs, right? So again, it's
Which is
just a
so
matter.
weird to me because that's so counter the way that we're pushed. Put more down, pay less monthly, essentially.
Yes. Yes. Well, again, it's all about risk factors, right? They're basically using it to adjust so that it prevents people or prevents like the entire mechanism from falling apart, right? That's the reason why it exists. Okay.
Like, I
Like,
see why they're doing this, but like, let's talk about like the reality of it. My concern is that this is part of the incentive of why I got a high credit score and did what it took to build a high credit score without, mind you, I had over an 800 credit score when I bought my home. Okay,
yes.
so it wasn't, oh, you couldn't raise your credit score. I do hear that, and I hope I'm not being too harsh, but I do hear that a lot as an excuse. Well, my credit's bad because I don't own a home and can't make mortgage payments. But if I, who has been broke, who had no, I'm not a trust fund baby, right? Um, right. I've truly been broke, where no money in the bank account, living in a house with amazing friends of mine in Canada, Filipinos that took me in when I had nothing left, sleeping next to a drain in the basement where I just literally water would leak next to me. So, like, if I can build an 800 credit score coming from that, right, then my concern is that this is basically removing the incentive of, man, why do I need a great credit score anymore? You work towards it, right? What it incentivizes us to work really hard to do what? To get in more favorable circumstances, more favorable financial status so that we can have better purchasing power and better, like, so do you think that there's a potential backfire here of where it's decentivizing people from actually addressing the real problem, which is their finances and their financial management?
No, I don't think so, because the ultimate equalizer is interest rates, right? Like, people with better credit scores are going to get better interest rates, period. Okay. So it's kind of like, okay, well, it sucks that, my fee as a better credit borrower is increasing, which again sucks. But at the same time, I'm always going to get a better interest rate than the guy at a 600 credit score, period,
Okay.
across the board, right? So it balances out in a sense. Of course, it makes no sense to us right now, but again, it's these super genius mathematicians that are working for Fannie and Freddie. They're just trying to, use these low level prices to decrease risk for them, right? Because they're
I always am skeptical when the government makes any changes because historically, everything, and if you are watching this and you disagree, listen, I am open to debate. I'm not someone who's saying absolute. I'm just saying my opinion is that every time the government tries to help a particular group or type or class of people, they pass laws that backfire every single time. That it just ruins it. It either goes bankrupt, it creates a nightmare of problems, it ends up like causing so many issues that the purpose that it was designed for never even gets realized. And so, and I know this isn't as drastic as what I'm talking about. I know that. We're not talking about laws. We're not talking about, controversial stuff, whether you agree or disagree, like affirmative action. We're not talking about that. I know that. But I always, my limited mind says, man, part of why I worked so hard was to make sure that I got cleaned up to be able to afford the luxury, if you will, of having a lower interest rate. And so it seems weird to me, but again, it doesn't make me right.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, loan level pricing is not for the clients. It's for Fannie and Freddie to protect themselves. Just like mortgage insurance, it sounds great, but it's not. It's protecting the lender, right? They're charging
Well, yeah, that
you.
one I knew. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the same kind of concept, right? They're doing this to protect themselves because, at one point Fannie and Freddie were losing a ton of money and they were going to fall apart. This was created to prevent that. It's a cushion, so to speak. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
All right, should we keep moving?
Yeah, we're good.
Sweet. So what else has changed in a nutshell too? There's a couple other things, right?
Well, we've already covered this slide, I think.
Did we?
Yeah, we already
My
covered
brain
this slide.
is I'm still kind of sick, so my brain is like, what's happening?
It's
Plus,
all
we're
good.
talking a lot of numbers. So my brain's like processing. What is he saying? How does this affect people and everything, right? Even when I was doing these slides, I was like, oh, there's a lot here. I gotta come back and like go over this again because there's a lot. Okay, I think we have another. Yeah, okay. So a couple bullet points here if you want to go over them.
Yeah. So this is their new credit score bands at 760 and 780.
Was that wrong? Did we type something wrong?
Increasing fees for mini cash. Oh, these are just in general what's being affected.
Right. Just the bullets.
Yeah. So 760, 780s are increasing in fees, right? Of course, there's changes to multi-unit properties, an increase of that, or there's a possibility that you can be hit by that. Of course, subordinate financing, like you were talking about earlier, that's another thing that loan level pricing has affected, and of course, cash out loans, right? So these are just examples of what are being affected, but those are like there's more, but those are like the kind of the highlights.
So when you say big increases in fees for many cash out loans, do you have a scope or a range or an example yet, or not yet?
It's
right for investors. That's going to be the people who really look at that and do cash out refis and things like that.
Yeah, they don't really tell us what it is, right? They're just saying that that's what's being affected. But
so we don't really have any good examples yet, good metrics to go off of.
We'll probably find out in March.
In March? Oh, we got to wait till March, of course, right?
Yeah, because
May
is when it's happening, right? But people are going to start adjusting. Like companies are already adjusting for it, right? But yeah, May is when it becomes official.
So I think because we kind of covered this. So I think what's really important, what I'm hearing today is, one, keep watching the show because as it updates, we'll try and keep you guys updated as we get more solidified data. A lot of this is here's what we're going to do, but we don't know the impact. It's like any law or any change that ever happens. You have to wait until it actually gets used and put into action to see the impact. But if you're an agent, investor, whatever, or even consumer, make sure that you're paying attention so that you don't go make a decision and either shoot yourself in the foot because you didn't make an informed decision. You based it off of, let's say, last week's news type of attitude, or you missed out on a good opportunity, right? You could have taken advantage of a different opportunity, a different strategy, because you're going to know, like, good agents and good lenders are going to work as fast as they can to learn how to make these new changes as favorable for their clients, because that's how they're going to get those clients, right? So would you agree as far as like for anybody listening kind of on the real estate side, like just really pay attention to how these changes start to affect the market? Yeah, seems pretty good.
Yeah,
sweet, because now we can laugh after all that number crunching and stuff. I got a good one for you today, man. I got a good one for you. All right, everybody, it is time for What the Funny Fact. I'm seriously, every time I'm like,
it almost sounds like you're about to say
don't say it. Don't say it. Right? Random funny facts that make you go, WTFF? I love saying that part too. Snakes are able to predict earthquakes.
Wow.
Now, there are other animals that can do it, but snakes are actually the most reliable animal on the planet, at least as far as we know, that can predict earthquakes. Who even thought to test this out?
Yeah, how do they know this? I mean,
like, Man,
Like,
there's so many times that I'm like, how do people find this stuff out? Like, what a weirdo. Some of them are like, what a weirdo. And some of them are just like, oh, I wonder if this snake knows if like, I don't even know. Like that, never in a million years, right? All right.
maybe
So then
someone owns like a bunch of snakes or something, you know. And they
here's
just
what I
know.
have to say about that. So maybe the real villains of Snakes on a Plane was Samuel Jackson. Now hear me out, okay? All right. So here he is, and he's on that plane, right? And he's like, get these snakes off this plane. But here's the reality. Snake comes on, he's like, bro, first off, rude. Second, there's an earthquake. So maybe the snakes were on the plane because they were like, an earthquake's coming. It's gonna be a really bad earthquake.
Yes.
We're gonna get on this plane, right?
Yes.
So you get off this plane. Like, what do you want us to do? Fly our own plane? I've got news for you. We don't have hands.
Yeah. They should be like, you should be grateful because we're telling you what to do. I mean,
we're saying don't land this plane right now until this earthquake passes.
Right.
Sam Jackson be like, my bad. What a plot twist right there.
Nice.
Were you ready for that one? I don't know how I come up with this stuff too.
No, I did not expect
like
that.
when I do the funny fact, like, man, I'm just like, okay, because I like to create that little like meme story of it, right? Because it's just funny. And I'm like, snakes and earthquakes. I'm like, how on earth am I going to create something for this? Then my brain's like, ding, snakes on a plane. They're on the plane because there's an earthquake. Samuel Jackson's just being a jerk when really they're just trying to like not die not crumble underneath an earthquake. So anybody watching, did that make you go, what the FF? Leave a comment with your random funny fact and we might feature it in a future episode. So let's talk about what we learned today. Today we learned that interest rates are up by 0.07 points. Mortgage-backed securities are down by 0.16 points. And that if you see a snake roaming around, there's a chance an earthquake might be coming because they leave their nests when there's an earthquake. Do you know why? Because they don't want their own house crumbling on top of them. So they actually leave their house. So it makes me think now, like every time I'll see a snake somewhere, I'm like, are you trying to tell me something, buddy?
Yeah.
Is there an earthquake?
I guarantee
it's like Lassie, right? Is Jimmy in the well?
Right. I guarantee you the next time I see a snake, I'm going to think about the earthquakes for sure. That's a guarantee.
You're calling your family, get out of the house, get out of the house. They're like, what? I saw a snake in the house? No, just outside somewhere. Why would you want us to go outside? It might be an earthquake. Yes. You're crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. All right, Larry, I'm going to bring you right back shortly if you're up for it today.
Yes, I am.
Because we got some crazy topics to go over.
I can't wait.
For everybody, thank you so much for watching What the Mortgage is Going On. Larry joins us every Friday, 9 a.m. Central. And who knows, maybe I can just start doing some daily, like, you know, he'll do like a 1 minute What the Mortgage is Going On. Bing, bing, bing. And a crazy, sarcastic, sassy newsletter. If you would love a daily newsletter and a live show about like a sassy article in real estate or real estate related, leave a comment and let me know because I really like making them sassy and sarcastic. So, Larry, I'll see you in just a moment. For everybody else, head on over to our YouTube. For those who don't know, Facebook can be really fickle sometimes and decide to randomly suspend your personal account for absolutely no reason and then say it was an error, but then still suspend you from posting in groups, even groups that you manage and own. Great. That makes sense because that's what I do every time I have an error. I just add suspensions to the people I wronged. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're going to be doing a lot more hosting over on YouTube to avoid issues like this. All right. With that being said, we have some crazy things to go over today. We talked about it earlier. Wells Fargo mortgage shakeup, and Florida condo controversy. These are huge. And of course, I'm going to bring in one of my partners and top producing agent, team leader, coach, and most importantly, he's the icon bearded agent. So Chris Rains coming at us live. Good morning, Chris.
Where's he at? I'm kidding. What's up, guys?
I would hope you're kidding, because then I'd be genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
Where's he at?
Who I am? Who is this guy? Didn't sleep well last night.
Man, I don't get to sleep well any night.
Used to. When I was like 19, I could sleep in a cave and on a rock or whatever. And now, in your 30s, it's like you wake up and it's like, man, I was in a comfy bed with a perfect pillow and everything else and still couldn't sleep.
You know what's crazy? I think my best memorable sleep nights, what a weird thing to say, is camping. I think I when I camp, or at least when I used to camp, I feel like I remember those being like the deepest, most amazing sleep.
Ding 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 ding.
Literally, right? Like, but then I'm like in an expensive bed with an expensive pillow and expensive blankets and temperature controlled house, and I'm like, I can't sleep.
Can't sleep.
But then there's mosquitoes swatting at me, and I'm sweating. And
this is still right next to you. That's why.
I can feel it. The waves like pinging at my brain.
So everything's pinging, and there's work to be done. But when you're camping and there's no cell service and you can't reach anything anyways, it's like, all right, well, not missing out on anything because I literally can't get service.
So Chris, we got some pretty insane topics for you today. We're going to bring on Larry again. Larry, welcome back. He's like, oh, okay, put down
Larry. Does anybody know who Larry is?
That guy right there.
All right.
He's the third guy. That's not you or me.
Yeah, I'm the one without the beard, for sure.
Oh,
it would take me like 20 years to grow a beard like you guys. So
them Asian genes, right?
Yeah, I would have like a Fu Manchu. It would look like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like three straight.
The kung fu
one.
Yours
would go this way. Robert already goes like this way.
Yeah.
Goes out a little bit more. You guys could like
look how long my hair's getting too. It's
almost
crazy.
fly off if you were right next to each other.
Perfect.
Like wings.
All right, guys. So you ready? So let me give you a little background to what's happening. So regulatory pressure and interest rates force Wells Fargo to rethink their mortgage strategy. Let me give you a brief description, and then we're kind of going to jump into it. Wells Fargo is withdrawing from the multi-million-dollar market for U.S. mortgages due to regulatory pressure and rising interest rates. Now, there's more in play there. Wells Fargo always blames someone else for every problem that they have. Let's be real. Look at their history. The bank, however, will now focus on home loans only for existing customers in minority communities, which to me is a little weird. That you can just say you're only going to serve minorities. Like, anyway, that leaves a huge void in the mortgage market. The decision is a result of a lending market collapse, increased scrutiny from regulators, and questions about the long-term profitability of the business. You can say that, but I feel like those questions have been around since day one of loans, mortgages, and loans. Those questions have never gone away. So it's really hard to say. There will always be increased in regulations in anything that the government has their hands in, or in anything that has to do with money. If there is money involved, there will always be more and more regulations and more scrutiny. Lending market collapse, that's a really weird term to use. What is a lending market collapse? That's like the people who said that the housing market is crashing because it's changing. Those are two separate things. So this move could have far-reaching implications for the U.S. mortgage market, though, because Wells Fargo is not a joke. As terrible as their business practices have been, guys, seriously, just look up Wells Fargo scandals or Wells Fargo penalties and fines. I mean, they have done some absolutely insane, fraudulent, crazy things. You would think in a market with increased regulations that there wouldn't even be a Wells Fargo with the amount of things that they've done. So that's another reason why it's very like, oh, regulations are getting too strict. Really? The same regulations that allowed you to do a ton of illegal things and stay in business? Okay. But it could leave consumers exposed to potential pitfalls. The bank is also shutting down its correspondent business and significantly shrinking its mortgage servicing portfolio, which is different than mortgage originating. Those are two separate things. We're not going to get into huge details there. So this will probably result, obviously, in a lot of layoffs for the mortgage operations, because Wells Fargo is a giant contributor to the mortgage industry when it comes to mortgage servicing and mortgage originating. So with that being said, Chris and Larry, did you guys have any wind of this Wells Fargo news on your side of things? Chris, what about you? Like, did you get any wind of that prior to this conversation?
Not not a single whiff of it, mainly because I'm so busy taking care of clients and agents.
Larry, what about you?
I see headlines like this all the time, and I just kind of roll my eyes and just move on. Not saying that it doesn't affect me, right? It will, but Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, all the large banks is like, of course, what's next? So I'm not saying that I didn't know about it, but I didn't really get into
worry about it.
Yeah,
I know about it. I'm not worried about it. Yeah, I feel that way in the sense of like, okay, but what are you going to do about it? Right? Yeah. And that's how I feel too. Like, why get outraged? It's like when the person you voted for didn't get elected and you're like, it's the end of the world. And I'm like, really? Okay, well, then give me all your stuff, since it's doomsday anyway.
Yes.
Go ahead and just wire it all over to me. I'll take it all. Bitcoin, cash. I'll take that beat up old car with all the bumper stickers on it of your politician. Sure. Right. But
it's like that meme that I posted when people were like talking trash about the presidents being on the dollar bills. I'm like, I'll take your dollar bills if you want to.
I'm like, oh, that's so horrible. You're right. Let me just, you know what? I'll take them off your hands. I don't want you to suffer any longer. Like, it's such a petty way. But here's a couple of things though, right? Okay. Would you not argue though that since Wells Fargo is the number one, and I actually didn't know they were number one in mortgages, because they don't, I didn't know that. I knew they were like top three, but I thought
they're the number one holder. They're horrible at
doesn't make them good, right?
Yeah,
it does not make them good, guys. Just
horrible at writing.
Just because someone's number one does not mean they're good.
Closing in a timely manner, they're horrible.
Closing in a timely manner, transparency, not committing fraud, not opening up accounts without their client's permission. Like, the list is wild, dude. Like, the list is wild. How are they number one? Like, with their track record.
Wells Fargo achieved exactly what a large banking institution achieved, and that is becoming the one stop for all things financial, right?
Including illegal financial things.
Well, yeah. But basically, people use Wells Fargo for a mortgage because that's who I bank with. Right?
Robert, if you're not careful, you're going to end up suiciding yourself.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Wells Fargo, you're beautiful and amazing, and I love all of the ethics and legal activities that you operate with.
That's better? I feel like you're going to be around next week, possibly now.
Okay. And then every week after, I'm just going to have to pay tribute to you.
Yep.
Okay. Remind me.
You get canceled by the
Let me cancel it from my free show. I'll lose a fortune. All right, so let's ask some of my silly questions then that I love to ask. Okay, so why bother trying to reach as many Americans as possible when you can just focus on the ones that already bank with you? Nobody wants to grow and expand their business. Obviously, you only want the clients that you already have. No new clients, right, Chris? When you look at clients, you say, I don't want more clients. I don't want to keep having new business come in. I only want past clients.
I look at this and I'm like, is this a real question?
It's me, Chris.
Really? It's you.
It's never a real question.
This is
an unreal question. Expecting a real answer.
Expecting a real answer.
I want a real answer.
So why bother trying to reach as many Americans as possible? So we pretty much know if you're reaching as many people as possible that you're only going to get a certain percentage, probably get, on average 1% close rate. So you have to reach as many people as possible if you want to grow. And if you're I mean, you can focus on the ones that already bank with you, because that will get you some referrals unless you're trash, in which case some of those people will still stay with you just because it's too much work to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
But
convenience.
you can grow much faster with referrals. So I think that's my long, short answer.
Is Wells Fargo too large and too successful? Is that what's happening to handle the mortgage market, Larry? Is that just what it is? They're just too great at what they do, and they just can't handle any more greatness.
No, that's not the case.
Larry's like, I can't believe I answer these questions every single week.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I am going to try to give a real answer to this, right?
Well, yeah, that's the whole point. I give you
yeah.
unrealistic questions, and you give realistic answers.
Yes. So my realistic answer is Wells Fargo. To them, a mortgage is just another tool in the tool belt, right? They don't hinge their business on the mortgage side of their business. Okay, so it's like, whatever. It's kind of like you know what? I'm gonna compare it to the McRib. Okay, McDonald's has all sorts of items on the menu, right? But they bring back the McRib when they think it's a good time, and they make a little bit of money. But then maybe it starts costing too much money. Maybe the meat gets too expensive or whatever, or maybe they ran out of supplies and they don't want to so they're like, you know what, we're just going to cancel the McRib for now, right? So it's not a big deal to them, right? So they just happen to sell the most McRibs or barbecue sandwiches, right? But to them, it's just another item on their menu, and it's not a big deal to them, right? Which is probably why, based on what you said earlier, the comments may be true. Again, I don't want to get canceled or suicided, but
right, just let me say that.
Yeah. They're like, it is what it is, whatever. Let's move on.
So kind of, you're talking about like basically all their eggs in one basket. That's not what they do. It reminds me of Costco.
That would be a really expensive basket right now, too.
It really would be an expensive basket right now. But it actually reminds me of Costco. Most people think, oh, Costco sells a ton of stuff. And they think like a grocery store, a typical grocery store, that's how they make money. The vast majority of Costco's income comes from their membership. They have 114 million members. That is an absurd amount of members that are paying for their memberships. And I believe the average lifespan of someone's Costco membership is years. So, I mean, you're just like, their turnover rate is so low, and their membership goes up, obviously, with inflation. So it's something that escalates. And it's something that people pay annually. You do not pay monthly for your membership. So basically, every year, they're getting giant chunks of money poured into their business, and then they sell a bunch of products that also create other revenue streams.
Yep. It's predictable residual income for them.
Right. It's like a gym membership, basically. You get that every year. And then a lot of gym memberships, even though they have a monthly, you don't read the fine print that there's like an extra $79 yearly equipment fee. So you're paying your monthly, that's their profit, right? It's absolutely.
Dude, don't get me started on gym memberships. That is one of the biggest strategies. Man, I'm really going to get suicided. I used to manage and work gyms. I won't say who, so maybe they won't come after me. But I used to manage and work at gyms, and I learned that like their strategy was just get people to sign up and then make it so hard for them to cancel or so costly for them to cancel that they don't cancel. And there's people
might rhyme with mold him. Molds him. I feel like it might rhyme with molds him without saying
it's all of them, man.
Which gym it is. No,
there's a couple. There's a couple good gyms out there who are really reasonably priced for the reasonable offer that they give. But a lot of the big dogs,
and they don't make any money, unfortunately.
It's true. But listen, Netflix isn't profitable either. All they do is they used leverage debt, and they turn around and it's called future debt rating or something. How likely could they pay back this debt eventually? And that's how people leverage them, which is really, really funny, because it's like, oh, we don't make any money. Well, man, I'm going to give you more money. Like, what? I would love to go to my bank right now and be like, hey, listen, I'm broke. Could you just give me $1 million loan? And they're like, yeah, totally. Right. So, okay, let's move on. Why not just let non-bank players take over the market and expose consumers to potential pitfalls? Chris, that sounds like a good idea.
Non-bank players take over the
Should
market.
should I put that to Larry?
Put that to Larry.
So so what I'm translating is like basically mortgage lenders, right? Not bank lenders. And why is that different? Well, because banks are FDIC, they're federally licensed, right? So what does that mean? That means a lot of the people that are doing the loans might not be licensed, or that's not what they do on a daily basis, right? So that's why Chris kind of alluded to it, like how people at banks, I mean, like I said, I compared to McDonald's, right? It's like the difference between McDonald's and like an actual restaurant, right? These people, they kind of just do it all, right? And in reality, it's not their main focus or their main expertise. So because of that, the quality of service might be whatever, right? It's dicey. That's my new word. It might
Right.
be dicey.
The risk goes up because they might not have the, I don't know if proper is the right word, but as much protection for on the consumer side of things as they could. You know, I'm gonna be, dude, I seriously am like carving my gravestone right now. But it's like most loans you get that are not really clear and federally governed are scams. Now, I won't get into the bank loans and how I feel about them. I feel like I've done that enough anyway, because the whole banking system in general, and I think a lot of people know how I feel about that anyway. But I will say, you go to those quick cash type of places, you go to anywhere that does title loans, things like that, you are asking for a lifelong loan. I know people who took out, man, I saw this guy one time. I was helping a client, and he was making good money, and he was like, well, I got into a tight spot and I needed $1,000, and I went and got it from these quick loan type of places. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, he's like, it just a lot of things happened all at once. And I'm like, okay, listen, okay. How long was that ago? Oh, that was 9 years ago. I said, 1,000, dude, I know I've seen your finances. You've made that money back. And he's like, but my payment on it now is I've paid over $3,000 in interest back to them, because what happens is that they would just keep giving me a loan to pay off the loan. And so then the loan would continue to rise, and I can't catch up. So he's like, I'm not actually paying back $1,000. I'm paying back, like, I think the total cost value of it was $5,000 if he wanted to pay it all off at once.
The way that works is you've got a $30 a month payment. So you go in there to make your payment, and they're like, you know what? Why don't you just push that? We'll give you $12 and a bag of chips, and then you can just come pay it. You come pay your $30 next month. So we'll give you an extra $12. Like, literally, they would talk people into $12 more, not make their payment. It gets pushed, and the interest just keeps rolling. They don't want you to pay off. They just want to keep you in the loop. So
it's a
they don't necessarily have to advertise that much for new customers.
One, the education, right? So like Larry has something to lose. When he turns around and he educates people about clients, he's got a license. He's got direct one-on-one communication. He's got people like Chris and myself to worry about that will absolutely put him into fire if he screws up with our clients. He has something to lose. But the clerk at a Quicken Loans who gets paid, not Quicken Loans, but like a quick loan place, all the catchy names, right? I don't want to get sued for, but they don't have anything to lose because they're paid hourly. So they'll issue
quick creep loans.
Creeping loans. We'll call them creeping loans. Just watch. There's someone.
I like quick creep because it's also fast, right? Quick creep.
Yeah.
Like, it dries fast.
But like, they have nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose. Their business and their income isn't based off of their reputation.
And
you don't go to those places for reputation. You go for desperation. And when you're desperate, you just take whatever someone will give you. You won't ask questions. You won't do the research.
And that's the reason why this Wells Fargo thing is like whatever, because like you said, they have nothing to lose, right? Like this sounds like, holy crap, is Wells Fargo going out of business? No, they're just flicking.
You know what it could be?
Arm. That's all they're doing.
Maybe this is Wells Fargo's turnaround. Let's be hopeful. Maybe this is Wells Fargo saying, we've mismanaged a lot of things. Maybe we're too big. We have too many clients coming in, and we need to listen. most people might disagree with this, but this is what Steve Jobs did to turn around Apple when it was about to go out of business. Now, I'm not saying Wells Fargo, but I'm saying when it was met with a crisis, Steve had to come in and restructure and change a lot of it and then develop a product. And that product ended up becoming which was the iPod. That product ended up becoming the game changer for their business forever. And now they're the most highly valued company in the world. So let's be positive and optimistic. Wells Fargo realized they had a consistent history of problems. They're going to close their doors for a little bit during this tumultuous time and say, let's just reorganize our house. Let's get our house in order. Hopefully some things in the market become a little more stable too. And then we'll come back together more prepared. Right? Okay. No, we won't do that one. No, we won't do that one. I want to get into the next one. Okay, so Chris, news or noise?
Which one?
Wells Fargo. The Wells Fargo story.
Oh, the Wells Fargo story.
Pulling out of mortgages. He's like, which one?
I was like, are we talking about one of the questions we just talked about? Like
the article. The article about Wells Fargo pulling out of, basically they're pulling out of, new mortgages.
I definitely think that's news.
News.
I think you need to watch that. Yeah.
Yep. Larry, news or noise?
I call it news for myself because that just means more loans
alone.
for more. Yeah, I get more loans because of it, right? Like Wells Fargo is no longer an option, right? So that's news to me.
Because you are a mortgage broker, correct?
Yeah,
Right,
yes,
so-
I'm a lender. Yes.
Yeah. So that I know, depending on your state, you can't say certain things, but you broker mortgages, just like we're real estate brokers, but we're not a broker.
Yeah.
Like it's very annoying, but like it's actually much more accurate than just saying we're a real estate agent. We help broker deals. We help provide opportunities and shop around for houses. So okay, so let's real talk for everybody listening, right? We had fun with the jokes and everything, but what should you do next, right? Well, first of all, because Wells Fargo's decision to withdraw from the multi-trillion-dollar market can have a significant impact on the market. We don't know. It might blow over. But here's the thing. You don't want to be caught unaware. So the reason why you should stay tuned to what we watch every week and keep in the loop of what's going on is you've got clients who bank at Wells Fargo. You've got clients who are thinking about buying a home, who are getting pre-approved, loan officers who are going to be using or used to use. Maybe they banked on Wells Fargo. Maybe that was their secret weapon, right? Everybody's got that go-to company that they just feel is the best product. And they're like, I'm going to always start there. We all have that, right? You need to know what's going on with them. And whether, not saying you need to know all the ins and outs or the numbers, but just be aware what's happening, right? So that you can just expertly guide your clients and ease their fears. If they come to you and say, Wells Fargo's going out of business, you just watch today's show and you go, they're not going out of business. Don't worry. Let me explain to you. And then you can even give them a plausible explanation, refer them to an article, even throw them on this show where they can get sassy attitude and silly questions, which will actually put them at ease, by the way. The jokes and stuff, it's not there just to make you laugh. It's actually to put people at ease because most of the time news, when it comes to real estate, it's not fun. A lot of it's hard stuff in this current market. A lot of it's grave and grim news, but it doesn't mean it isn't beneficial. It doesn't mean there's an opportunity. So we make it fun. We make it last. All right, let's move on. Now, this is a big one. All right, guys, I know we're running low on time, so we're going to breeze through this as fast as we can. So the cost of safety. Florida's condo law overhaul sparked controversy. So there's going to be no sassy questions on this one because this is a really sad story. But I think it's a good conversation, okay? So there was the tragic collapse of the Chamberlain Towers in Surfside, Florida. And that led the governor, Ron DeSantis, passing legislation mandating emergency reserve funds for condominiums. This was believed, the collapse was because of maintenance and insecurity or unstableness of the building and things like that. While this is meant to protect, quotation marks, protect residents, it also may financially cripple them and their landlords and create a divide between high-rise condos and single-family homes. There were 98 lives lost. in this collapse, which is significant. Think about that for a second. When's the last time you heard of a building collapsing and a large amount of people being caught in it?
Usually that's in some Asian country from a tsunami or something. It's very rare.
Right. Now, that was the next question. When did you hear last time happening in the US?
Man, 9/11.
9/11. That is, quite honestly, that's the last time I can remember. Now, I'm sure there's small building collapses, 1 or 2 people, things like that. Most of the time, it's construction workers, though. It's a construction-related accident, right? And it's oftentimes a mechanical failure, not a building structure failure. So it's really, really interesting. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up today is, one, it's, if you're in Florida, this was just passed, so you're definitely going to want to know. And Florida is one of the biggest real estate markets in the U.S. But also remember that once one state does something, a lot of other states will get scared and they'll preemptively do something. So you might be like, well, I'm in Texas. I'm chilling with Larry. We good, man. We're fine. We're not in Florida. And the next thing you know, the governor of Texas goes, hey, listen, we want to preemptively get ahead of this potentially significant situation, right? Okay, what should we do? And then they pass a law, and then next thing you know, things change. So guys, like, I don't want to get too deep into the story, especially with our time, but I kind of have some serious questions. No jokes, because when lives are lost, we cut out the sarcasm and the sass and talk about this really seriously. So do you think that it's a worthy measure that will actually help solve the safety issue? So again, the resolution was that there would be emergency reserve funds so that condominiums could address serious issues in their building structure. Now, before you answer, I'm a little confused, though, because what is a working fund, a capital fund, right? Condominiums all have HOAs. They all pay dues, and all of them have working capital funds and things like that. I couldn't get more on this, on whether they were tapped out and they were drained, which is concerning because they're supposed to always have a fund. That's the whole point, right? And they're supposed to do annual basis evaluations of funds to make sure that they have a fund. So my concern is like, okay, but was this just negligence on management, improperly managing funds? I couldn't get more details. There's a lot of, right, it's really fresh. And so if anybody's watching and I say anything inaccurate, please know I'm just doing what I had access to, and I would love your insight. So Chris.
So yeah, I can dive in on a little bit of this. Well, it actually solved the safety issue. Maybe not the safety issue, but as much as the having the funds available. So a lot of people don't realize when those budgets and stuff are set, they're set for routine maintenance. They're not set for something huge that comes up that's really going to mess with the structural integrity of the home. That's what those funds are really put there for. That's for new roofs. That's for replacing guardrails, repainting, the typical stuff that you need to do over time. But if you truly have, let's say, a sinking condo complex, and that can be very, very expensive to come in and jack that stuff up. So are most condos going to have that kind of money? No, they're not going to have that kind of money in their funds. So, I mean, I guess I kind of understand where they're coming from with trying to make sure, but most people buy condos due to cost, affordability, and that kind of stuff. So if you start really jacking up how much you need in an account just in case something goes wrong, that's going to significantly increase the condo price to the point where maybe that's unaffordable at that point. So
I get it. Right. It's like there's obviously an issue. Looking at some of the numbers, which again, I didn't have time to put on the slides today, but there's about 1 million people, or a million condo units in Florida alone that service about 2 million people that are at least 30 years old, right? And obviously we can assume if this place didn't have an emergency repair fund, different from a working capital fund, they probably don't have an emergency repair fund either. And the one that fell, the Chamberlain Towers, was 40 years old. So we all know this as real estate agents and stuff. I mean, when you get a home that's 20, 30, 40 years old, that's from single family use. We're talking about single family use. When you get condominiums, you have to expedite the wear and tear, right, by the amount of people using it. Because the stairs, it's not one set of stairs used by one family daily. It's one set of stairs used by 100 families daily, right? Or 100 people daily. The elevators, right? The fire alarms, balconies, all those things. And so like I get the need, but there's a couple concerns here, right? Which is, but since when has ever the consumer not paid the price financially for increased government regulations? In other words, nobody's going to cut a consumer a break and say, hey, listen, don't worry about it. We're not going to increase your rent or your purchasing power for a condo. They're absolutely going to pass that on as if rising interest rates weren't already hard enough for people. So Larry, from the financial perspective, like, do you think it's probably going to get passed on to the consumer?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it will be, because I mean, these, the people who are principals of these properties, if they can't sustain profitability, then they're not going to get into the business or own property or be able to even, serve their clients, right? So someone has to pay for it, right? And they're not going to be able to pay for it. I mean, this is why, like, when people talk about like increasing wages, a lot of these restaurants just can't afford it, right? Like, why would I start open a restaurant if I'm going to make half or 25% of what I really should be making, right? So yeah, I think it's going to get passed on to the client. So they're just going to increase prices on the menu items, right? They're going to increase the cost of buying these houses or the rent or whatever it is that they need in order to make up for it. So that's the way I look at it. Yes.
So I think, when I'm reading this, and, I've spent some time reading the comments of people, even trying to read some of the stories of people who are there or in certain situations. A lot of them actually seemed receptive. Like, we kind of they were actually under the assumption that this was already done, which actually, quite honestly, if you go from renting to a condo, the mindset is almost exactly the same. Right. There's a lot of dependence and trust into the condominiums association. You're not a homeowner on their own who takes care of everything. You're really not. There's a lot that is handed off, especially depending on the level of condominium. But what I'm learning or seeing from people is that their concern is, but how do they know? HOAs are notorious for taking money, but not showing any transparency of where the money was spent. Oh, they do these annual reports. Listen, I get an annual report from my HOA. I'm seriously going to get suicided locally now. I get a report from my HOA, and you know what it says? Like, assessment fee. Oh, I'll just reach out to the HOA, right? Because they're so open to communication, right? So a lot of people are concerned that they're going to pay these extra fees, which they said, listen, I'll pay extra fees if we know that the money's being held and if proper inspections are being done. Because here's the reality. Even if the HOA that's running this, Chamberlain Tower, right, running this, should not have warning signs been addressed years in advance. So, and I don't have any sources to the law itself. I tried to find one. I couldn't find it. And I won't say I'm a lawyer anyway, so I don't want to risk that. But it is, if there isn't any enforcement of routine checkups and inspections, the fund will still be useless. Right? Would you agree, guys? Like, if there is no accountability that they're actually checking for the issues, then the funds will just sit there. And then they'll say, well, we did our job. And then you know what's going to happen? Here's what's going to happen. I guarantee here's what's going to happen, okay? Count on this. An accident, if this isn't enforced with mandatory inspections and things like that, then an accident's going to happen again at some point, large or small. And you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, we just didn't have enough money to fix the problems. And then it's going to go from the emergency reserve fund of at least, let's say, $10,000. They're going to be like, well, if we had $20,000, that's why we didn't fix it. We didn't have enough money. And part of me says, there is an understanding that everybody knows, an assumption of liability and responsibility when you are in a condominium. It is not the same as a single family home. Would you guys agree? There is shared responsibility, but there is a clear leader amongst condominiums. That is the condominium association that runs the condominium, that dictates the rules. So who's really at fault here? Is there not a case of negligence? How could there not be? After 40 years of running that condominium, how could there not be a case of negligence here? What do you think, Chris?
There's still people that you can point fingers at. Is there negligence? Probably. I don't know. It's tough. I have a hard time with that, man. And the main reason I have a hard time with it is not being 100% involved and giving you an answer based on the limited amount of facts that I have. Could somebody be at fault? Sure. Am I going to sit here and say that they're at fault without knowing all the details? No, I'm not. I don't really operate that way usually. With that, and that's with any problem or issue that comes up. So I want to know all the facts before I start pointing fingers and truly blaming somebody.
But I think the conversation is important because I think people listening need to have this conversation.
I'm not saying it's not important, but I think there's I would have to really dive in. Have to see.
It would take a whole day session of reporting to.
Well, and I would want to talk to whoever's actually in charge, whatever inspector they might have had come out and do their stuff, and also what can they see versus what can you not actually access. So if something's under a slab, like what's the inspector supposed to do? Get the Ninja Turtle machine that drives underneath the thing and check it out?
Well,
you can't.
It could be a safety issue. Something has to be done.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just trying to I don't know what those pillars look like. I mean,
but that's not your job to know because you're not running a condominium association or owning one.
But even if you run an association, I mean, usually it's some retired dude that doesn't have anything better going on with his life. That's the head of the
that's what I'm saying. I think that the fund is actually very reasonable. Chris, you and I invest in properties. We've talked about this before. We look at a property just because it cash flows. We both said, yeah, but we still need a fund. We've talked about this. We still need a fund in case anything major happens so we can address it right away.
Yep.
Right? So we understood, and we're not a big old association, an investment firm, a giant landlord. We're not that. And we even understood at a basic level that structural or serious emergency things can happen and you need to be prepared for them, or you need to not buy the property.
Could go into the millions of dollars easily, though, for some kind of major structural overhaul like that to fix something. Like, who's going to say, I want $2 million just because this problem could come up. I want $2 million sitting in the bank, just sitting there, possibly collecting a little bit of interest. I can't use it, but all my money's there. All the money from the complex is there. Most people are not going to agree to that.
So then what's the solution? What do you think is the solution?
I mean, when you sign on the dotted line that you're going to be part of the condo association, you got to figure out how to make sure that when the time does come and you've got to pony up, you got to pull your share. I mean, that's the solution. I mean, it's already that should already be what the solution is, and that's usually how it goes.
That is usually how it goes. But what we're seeing is that
whatever, everybody ponies up, and it is what it is.
I just realized the time.
Yep.
Man, we got it. I guess we'll just breeze through it, huh?
Larry's at fault, my opinion, and that's
I knew it.
I'm always to blame.
We'll get into what you should do next. You know, even at a basic level, we're about to get into that. But Chris, news or noise?
With the condo stuff, I think you need to be aware of it. I definitely think it's news. You want to be aware. You want to think about your investments. You want to think about the high rises. When I look at short-term rentals and investments on my own side of things, I think about some of these issues that have come around, and I'm like, what do I want? So I tend to stick more towards the single-family side of things or townhome type structures where I don't have somebody on top of me or I'm not on top of somebody else. That's what I've usually looked at whenever I'm doing investments on my own. But it's also going to depend on your proximity to the beach, all that kind of stuff. So the closer you are to the actual ocean versus if you're a block or two off could make a huge difference in, the type of terrain that you're thinking about putting that stuff on, whether or not that stuff gets washed out. It's a lot. So, and you're also talking about insurance cost on that. I mean, if you're a couple blocks off the beach, your insurance is going to be completely different than somebody that's oceanfront. So it's a lot. When I'm looking at that stuff, my brain goes into all of those details, and I'm like, all right, what risk am I okay with? But knowing those risks, I think it's news. I think you do need to be aware of that kind of stuff, especially if you're investing in condos.
Larry, news or noise?
I consider it news. And this is me from like almost like a consumer perspective, right? Let's just pretend things like this are acts of God. Let's just call that, right? Just an unavoidable disaster type situation. Now, do you want to risk yourself by living in a condo? Because what if this can happen again? It's just like comparing it to people living in certain parts of Florida, right? The real estate market in Florida, where the hurricane hit, dramatically dropped because of the hurricane, right? So because investors didn't want to buy anymore in that area because of the risk, right? Nothing they can control. There's no one they can blame. It's weather, right? Natural disasters. So
it's time to buy right now, because in 10, 20 years, people will forget about all that stuff. They'll be going down there saying, hey, it's time to buy. Let's party down here.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It is time to buy. Everybody else pulls out. That means it's time to buy.
Yeah. So again, I think it affects your decision making as to where you want to move or buy, or like Chris said, invest. But I think for people wanting to move to a condo, this might kind of irk them a little bit and not make them want to live in that kind of environment.
Yeah. So let's talk about for everybody watching. I really want your opinion on this one, because I think this is a really, really I don't know, controversial topic. I don't know if controversial is the right word, but like, there's a lot to unpack. What do you guys think about this situation? Right? What do you think? What do you think's the solution? Are you more nervous? Are you more scared? Are you going to change the way you look at it? And then let's kind of talk about what you should do next. Then we'll wrap up the show. First and foremost, it's like we say every week: just stay informed. Listen, I'll be the first to tell you that it wasn't till news like this that I learned about that I thought differently about, and I looked at things different. It wasn't the first time that I saw a crack in a cement or in the side of a wall that I thought differently about structural engineering and what happens. So I'm not telling you need to know it all. What I'm telling you is just to keep your pulse on things that are relevant to you. If you're not worried about commercial buildings and you're not buying commercial buildings anytime soon, then I'm not telling you to go study commercial buildings every day. But if you're thinking about condos, buying or selling a condo, you might want to just make sure that you keep your pulse on what's happening in your local condo market. Look up a little bit about the laws. Make sure your agent has more to say other than condos are amazing. Make sure that your agent does research. And listen, it's okay if your agent doesn't know. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. You can't know it all. But make sure that you go, and Chris is great at this. I can go to Chris. I know this 100% because I've seen clients do this. And he goes, I don't know, but I'm going to go get you the best answer that the market can provide. There's nothing wrong with that. A good agent should always be willing to go do the work for you. So if you are an agent and you have clients looking in any particular type, condos, anything, make sure that you're actually thorough. The amount of cases where people get screwed over by HOA bylaws is insane, and they blame you. Yes, it's their fault, actually. At the end of the day, it's their fault for not reading or requesting certain documents, especially depending on your state. Not all states require HOA documents before closing. Some of them can be provided after. New construction is a huge loophole when it comes to HOA crap, because they'll be like, it's pending. right? Like, we'll give you a tentative one, but it's subject to change. So it's literally a useless document. So it just depends. But as an agent, they will blame you. So you want to make sure you actually read the HOA docs. Actually go and tell your clients you need to read these. Then you need to explain to them the pros and cons of what goes into buying a condo, being a part of an HOA as a single family. You need to be able to explain to them the risks and the rewards of it.
Cranky old dudes.
What?
It happens. Cranky old HOA managers.
Oh, I mean, they're pretty much all that way.
They're all cranky. They're all old, and they don't like anybody, and they don't want anybody to have any fun.
It's
what does the meme say? HOA is basically just a group of Karens.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Poor Karens. For all the Karens out there, I don't view you that way. You guys are amazing. Don't let the world bring you down. Just wait until they're calling them a bunch of Roberts.
My sister's name is Karen, so trust me, I feel
that doesn't count because it's family. So you probably do it on purpose. Like, you send her every Karen meme in existence. She's like, "That's not me. I don't do that." Larry, you're such a jerk.
I'm the one who actually named her Karen. That's the funny part.
So, but seriously, guys, stay informed and just stay aware and ask questions. You won't be able to fix it all. You won't be able to know it all, but you're going to hate yourself as an agent, as a client, if you didn't ask questions that made you feel comfortable about the decision that you make. That's what I'm going to tell you, right? When people were waiving inspections, I spent so much time grinding into their brains the pros and cons, to the point to where I actually had my buddy, shout out to Ben Seaman, who helped me review a document that I created as an extra layer of protection for myself that outlined bullet points, because I knew the long documents glossed over bullet points of what they agreed they were aware and made aware about. Right? I'm not saying to go do that. I'm just saying take your job seriously. Mm-hmm. If you're a consumer, take your purchase seriously. You can win in real estate or you can drastically lose. At the very least, just try to mitigate your risk as much as possible. It'll never be perfect. It'll never be perfect. All right, guys. I should have put a joke at the end or something. It just felt like rude or something, but then I hate leaving on such a dreary thing. But guys, if you've got any topics you want us to cover, any news stories that you think are wild and crazy and you love our thoughts on it, and maybe even some sassy remarks, I got you. Don't worry. I got you covered there. Make sure to just drop us a comment, tag us. And then remember too, that we got a lot more coming your way. Probably going to start that newsletter soon. So a lot of people actually send me their emails to join the beta newsletter for my sassy real estate news. So Larry, Chris, thanks for being on. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for staying late. You guys rock. And I will see you guys next time. So peace out to you guys, and then little closing messages. For everybody else watching, again, we just encourage you. The whole point of this show is to make it fun, but to bring you relevant information, things that you should know that you probably don't, or maybe an insight or perspective or resource you haven't considered or weren't made aware of. So please take your time. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you dislike. It's for you. I do this for you. So just tell us what's resonating with you, what brings you value and serves you at a higher level, because that's the whole point of it all. Tell me anything that you want to see more of, and then make sure that you stay informed. Again, that's why we do this show. Thanks for tuning in. We go live every Friday, 9 a.m. Central. This is Scale Through the Fail. I'm the host, Robert Bean, and we will see you